how are you doing today? My name is Louis Lee, and I'd like to introduce the UMass Conservatory of Music and Arts guitar program. Okay, the next segment is theory. You're going to need, as I mentioned in the introduction, the guitar pedagogy book, which will, at the end of each film, you will get the information. We'll tell you how to obtain one of these, okay? Great. So we're going to look at page 6. And it's good to know the name of the guitar parts. I like to use big words, and my mother always told me to simplify things, but I said, okay, well, I want to justify my degree and all the money that I paid for it, so I put in a big word. And the big word is nomenclature. So it's the guitar nomenclature, and actually what it means is just the guitar parts. So I just want to explain that to all my students. It says guitar nomenclature, and this is something that you really want to know. How does that relate to the guitar? You want to know about the guitar. You want to know what the headstock is. You want to know what the strings are, the nut, the bridge, the sound hole, so that if you go someplace and you want some strings, you can buy strings and they will not sell you a bridge or a saddle. You understand? So for any guitar student taking the guitar program, you want to know the nomenclature. So that's what we have on page 6. So you want to just make sure that I explain this thoroughly. Now, what we have here is we have two guitars. We have the acoustic guitar and we have the electric guitar. And you want to know the nomenclature because they are different. And the guitar that I was playing prior was an electric guitar. So it has electronics, so it's different from an acoustic guitar. Not unless the acoustic guitar is electric, but it's still different because it's an acoustic guitar, but it's being amplified, so it has electronics. But anyway, what you want to do is learn, and so we have these two guitars here, and I have a list, and it corresponds to the number, and it points to the part. So you want to know what each part of the guitar is. As I said, that's very important. Because if you go someplace, you don't want to say, you know, I need to purchase those I don't know what it is. And they'll say, well, what did you want? And then you can't explain. That doesn't really look like you know what you're talking about. And because you're taking the UMass Guitar Conservatory course, you want to know what the parts are. So you'll say, I want a machine head. I want to get the machine heads. Or I want to get a nut. Or I want to get a saddle. And so this right here will explain to you all these parts. It doesn't take long. Now, learning is something that I got my master's in, and we learn from repetition. A lot of students, they see this, they do not know. Say this list 30 times, and I'll show you, I'll demonstrate. It says 1, headstock, nut, machine heads, fret, truss rod, inlay, neck, heel, body, pickups, electronics, bridge, pickguard, back, sideboard, body side, sound hole, strings, saddle, fretboard. Now if I say that 30 times, that's it. I come back the next day at 30 times again. By the 4th day, I have it memorized. It only took me less than maybe 15 seconds to do that. Okay, so by the time I've done this 30 times, it's only going to be maybe 3 or 4 minutes. That's why you need 10 minutes a day to focus. That's not a long time. I know sometimes I can watch TV, watch the news, and before I know it, an hour have gone by. Okay, so this right here is only requires for the theory, it only requires you to spend 10 minutes. So again, it's repetition. That's how we learn, through repetition. Say the list, there are 20 names, 30 times. That's a good number. Not 10 times, 30 times. And by the 4th day, you'll know it. The 5th day, it's ingrained in your subconscious. It's called subliminal subduction. And then you'll never forget it. Trust me. And we're not talking about learning Shakespeare, a sonnet, to be or not to be. I remember that my mother for church used to always take me for Easter Sunday, and I had to learn a lot. The older I got, the longer the section I had to memorize. And it was difficult, but I had to learn it. This is real simple, just 20 words. So you need to know that. This is very important, okay? So this is the theory. So we cover that. Now, next, we're going to go to page 7. This is page 7. And what this addresses here, this talks about the name of the strings, guitar strings. And when I wrote the book, I try to make sure everything is associated with something so you can memorize it. So it can be memorized, excuse me. And I had come up with acronyms. How can you memorize 6 strings? And I said to myself, how can I do this? Actually, it was a student that I had about 4 or 5 years ago. I'd written this book 5 years ago. She said to me, Eddie A. Dynamite, goodbye Eddie. I said, wow, 10 years old, I learned something from this 10-year-old girl. I said, this is great. So I said, I'll put this in my book. Eddie A. Dynamite, goodbye Eddie. E-A-D-G-B-E. Easy to remember. Eddie A. Dynamite, goodbye Eddie. And that's what this addresses, so that you learn the name of the guitar strings. That's very important, because you would be amazed with a lot of guitar players. They cannot read, they do not know what the notes are, and they don't even know the name of the strings. But they might be able to play very well. I mean, extremely well. But you ask them, what note is that? I don't know. And that's not good, okay? Especially if you're attending this course. So we want you to know this. So remember, on page 7, we're talking about the name of the strings. Now, also it gets into the old way that we used to tune the guitar. Okay, now I showed you how to use the tuner. Okay, now we're going to go back to when I was much younger and they didn't have a tuner. We used to use a pitchfork. And you had to, I don't have one with me, and you would hear the A, and you would hear it, and then play the A string open. Or you would go to a piano and play an A note. Or you had a pitch pipe and you would blow it, and then you would associate with that. Or you would do that and you would use harmonics. And we'll get into that later. But the standard way they used to have it is they would compare the note on the 5th fret with the preceding note. And that's okay, but that's not perfect, because it's too callous. The ear cannot really hear, and it could be slightly off because we're dealing with vibrations. So when I was much younger, because I was a classical player, we used to tune and use harmonics. And I can hear that this one is slightly off because it vibrates fast. We'll get into this in the next lesson, but I wanted to talk about what this is in the book, so if you see it, you know what it's referring to. And this is the second section. It's talking about just how to tune and using the strings to keep the guitar in tune. Now, the way the book was written, it's written for beginners, intermediate, and advanced. Because now if you go down to the bottom part, we're talking harmonics. And it gets into the megahertz of how fast it's vibrating. This is advanced stuff. This isn't for beginners. But advanced players want to know that. And so that's what it's addressing. So you'll see it as beginners, intermediate, and advanced. All of that's written here so that you understand. If you see this, you wonder what it is, do not worry about it. Years later, you'll come back. It'll make sense. The book was written that way. Also, when I wrote the book, I wanted to compress everything. I know about books being in college. I've purchased books where the book could cost $200 or $300. I only use a few chapters, and I said, wow, I spent all this money. And I sold it back to the college, at the end of the term, and I got the book from Amazon anyway. It was cheap, but I got off on a tangent. However, in this book is very concise. Everything talks about what's important. I don't meander. I get to the point, whatever it is, and that's what you have here. Not a whole lot of gobbledygook, not a whole lot of talk. So with that in mind, that's the section for the finger exercise. Once again, you want to always use a downstroke when you're playing, and I'll demonstrate that again. Always use a downstroke. That is just a natural movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not an upstroke. It's always a downstroke. Remember that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And always use upstroke. So it's down, up, down, up. Think of if you were being chased by a pit bull. Would you run left, right, or would you skip? No, you're going to run left, right, so you can get out of the way and don't get bitten. So it's the same way. If you want to speed, you want to go down, up, down, up. So remember that. It's down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, in certain cases, you might have to use upstroke because then it gets into just the sound artistry of what you're trying to play. To get a certain sound, you need to use upstrokes, but that's something different. Just wanted to clarify that and address that because there are exceptions to every rule when you might have to use an upstroke or whatever, or 2 downstrokes or whatever, you know, any combination thereafter. But for practicing, always practice down, up, down, up. Very good, and that concludes this part of the section.